From games such as Witcher 3 to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild to Elden Ring. These are just some of the massive games that have won Game of the Year award and made a huge statement to the whole gaming industry. Welcome back, my fellow companions. Today I'll be ranking the Game of the Year award winners from worst to best. The Game Awards has been hosted since 2014, so there has been 11 games to rank worst to best. This is my opinion, so feel free to post your ranking in the comments section below. Let's head into the ranking. Coming in at number 11 is It Takes Two. The cooperative action-adventure game It Takes Two won Game of the Year in 2021. It was also honoured as the best multiplayer and best family game. The game was designed by Joseph Fares, requires two players to steer a divorcing couple who has been shrunk. It Takes Two has charmed audiences with its unique take on cooperative gameplay. In an era where big online multiplayer experiences get all the attention, this tiled old-school approach clearly struck a chord with judges. In the game, you fight to save the marriage of Cody and May through solving a series of ingenious two-players puzzles. The screen is split into two, and not only do you have to play with another person, you have to work together to complete the experience. It's the first time a game like this has won Game of the Year, and its success would no doubt encourage more studios to consider making more couch cooperative games. This was a style of game that was very popular back in the 1990s. So It Takes Two is the lowest on my ranking, and these are two reasons why. The first reason is when I was looking into the game of potentially buying it, I wasn't intrigued to actually playing the game. I didn't really like how the graphics were, I didn't really like how the story was really going. I just didn't really grasp onto that game style, and I was a bit unsure to actually purchase it. And number two, I found that 2021 was one of the worst years of gaming that I have been a part of for many years. And yes, there is reasons of to why, I'm sure you guys know why, but I just didn't want to pay for any of these type of games that weren't really that good. But obviously, It Takes Two did do very well, so it got the Game of the Year award. But we'll move on to the next one. Coming in at number 10 is Astrobot. Astrobot is a 2024 platformer video game developed by Team Asobi and published by Sony. This is Team Asobi's first game development since its separation from Japan Studio. As Astro, the player embarks on a quest to save lost bots and PlayStation 5 mothership parts and defeat the alien named Space Bully Nebulax, which had destroyed the mothership. Astrobot won Game of the Year in 2024. It is a 3D platformer where the player controls the title character, a small robot named Astrobot, through the use of a DualSense controller. Astro's core moveset is identical to previous entries, maintaining his ability to jump, hover, punch, and spin attack, as well as being additionally granted the ability to ledge grab. The ability to swim underwater also returns from Astro's bot rescue mission. Now the game has 90 levels, split across 6 galaxies and 60 planets. Each level falls under 3 different difficulty settings, easy, normal and hard. The main story levels primarily fall under the easy and normal difficulties, whereas the optional challenges stages fall mainly under the hard difficulty. Each level also contains a different difficulty indicator which is highlighted before entering the level. Now Astrobot looked like an absolutely amazing game, and unfortunately I do not have a PlayStation 5, but I did get to play it at one of my friends' houses for about an hour or two playing it, and it was actually really enjoyable. I actually really liked it, and I see why it was up there for Game of the Year. I personally disagree it for winning Game of the Year. That's just my opinion. I believe that Black Myth Wukong was a better game, but I have almost finished Black Myth Wukong and I haven't played a whole lot of Astrobot, so maybe I need to have a look at that again. But I'm not really complaining. I wasn't really surprised because Astrobot was coming in as one of the favorites, and it's kind of like a brand new type of game that is changing the gaming industry, and a lot of gaming industries are going to have to look at how Astrobot produced their game and presented it to the audience and how they gained traction. They got kids in getting involved into the game, which is a big thing that a lot of gaming industries now do not have. But Astrobot's coming into number 10. Moving on to number 9 is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. In a 2019 action-adventure game developed by From Software, it was released in Japan from Software and internationally by Activision for the PlayStation 4, Windows, and Xbox One in March 2019. This was set in the 1500s, Sengoku era Japan. An unnamed shinobi tasked with protecting a young lord of mystical lineage who is left for dead when a powerful samurai attacks and chops off his arm. Set after the rise of the Ashina Empire in the 1500s era Japan. Sekiro follows the story of Wolf, a shinobi tasked with protecting Kuro, a young lord of mysterious lineage from who has separated after being left or dead. The game features a fewer role-playing elements, lacks character creation and the ability to level up a variety of stats, and has no real-time multiplayer elements. It does, however, include gear upgrading, special abilities with a prosthetic arm, and a skill tree and limited ability customization. Rather than attacking to whittle an enemy's health points, combat in Sekiro revolves around using a katana to attack their posture and balance instead, as well as deflecting incoming enemy attacks, eventually leading to an opening that allows for a single killing blow. The game also features stealth elements, allowing players to initially eliminate or severely damage most enemies if they can get in a range undetected. Now, the game was directed by Hidetaka Miyazakiya, who had previously worked on the Dark Souls series and Bloodborne and also Elden Ring. So obviously, from knowing from that is such a good background for them to have. Now, Sekiro is number 9 for me, and unfortunately, the game is actually really good. I loved it. I thought this game was excellent. I bought it last year and played it. I thought it was such a good game. Now, the reason is that it's coming into number 9 is because there's a lot of better other games that I actually did prefer over Sekiro. Now, I found the story was a bit dull. Some of the boss fights that you first is not so great, and unfortunately wasn't the levels of what Bloodborne or Elden Ring was. And it's not really that type of style of game, but it was still a very, very fun game and definitely deserving to win Game of the Year. Now, coming in at number 8 is Overwatch. Overwatch is a team-based first-person shooter published and developed by Blizzard Entertainment. The two teams compete against each other to finish different kinds of objectives within a certain amount of time whilst also fighting each other. The game is also described as a hero shooter due to the fact that each player individually selects a hero to play in every match from a roster of 30 characters, all of which are divided into 3 different categories that suit their play style: tank, damage, and support. The game features a very bright and cartoon-like theme, something that makes it unique compared to other shooters. The game was released on May 24, 2016 for both Windows, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. The idea for the game came about after Blizzard cancelled their secret project, Titan, which was supposed to be a massively multiplayer online role-playing game within the same universe as Overwatch is taking place. Some of the same game's assets and parts of the lore was borrowed from the Project Titan. Now, Overwatch is one of my favorite multiplayer games to play. I found it's very fun, very enjoyable. At the moment, there's Marvel Rivals at the moment, and which I actually prefer more, just because it's the Marvel characters, and I wasn't really into the Overwatch lore, because as there is quite a bit of Overwatch lore that you can get yourself into. But I really like the concept of the game. I find it very fun. The leveling up system, the competition's really good, and the different modes you can play is very good. Sometimes can be repetitive, but I still prefer it, so it's going into my number 8. Coming in at number 7, now before you guys all start screaming at me in the comments, but just please listen to me, is God of War. Now, God of War is the 8th installment in the franchise overall. Unlike the previous installments, this game is focused on Norse mythology and follows an older and a much more seasoned Kratos, the former Olympian god of war who completed his revenge against his father, Zeus, as well as the Greek gods and titans, now becomes a remorseful figure as he abandons his atrocious past life, and now he has a new son named Atreus in the years after the events of God of War 3. This focus of Kratos, along with Atreus, beginning their journey to take ashes of Faye, Kratos' second wife and the mother of Atreus, to fulfill her request to spread at the highest peak at the 9 realms, while Kratos keeps his godhood and his violent past from his son, who is unaware of his father's divine nature and facing the conflict with monsters and Norse gods, including the nefarious Baldur. The game released on April 20, 2018 and was originally exclusive to the PlayStation 4. Many years have passed since Kratos took vengeance against the Olympian gods. Having survived his final encounter with his father Zeus, Kratos has since traveled to Midgard in ancient Scandinavia and now lives with his young son Atreus in the land of the Norse gods, a savage land inhabited by many monsters and warriors. In order to teach his son, whose mother has recently died, how to survive in such a world, Kratos must master the rage that he has driven inside for many years and embrace his newfound role as a father and a mentor. I know is a very, very good game, but I just would like to say it here. It's overrated. I don't think it's one of the best games of the generation. That is just my opinion. Like Elder Scrolls Skyrim is just so much better than God of War. They say that God of War is an open world RPG type game, but the thing is though, it's not an open world game because unfortunately you get barricade of where you actually can go. You can't just walk off into the bush and just keep going. You're kind of only on a certain path. Just like games such as, for example, like Elden Ring at times, in a certain location, you've only been trapped in this one area. You can't go everywhere. Now, I know God of War's story is excellent. Now, I actually really enjoyed the story. The combat, I wasn't the biggest fan of, actually. I was hoping that the combat would be a lot more newer and better than Skyrim, but I'm not saying that the Skyrim combat was better, but I just preferred it more. And I know that Skyrim and God of War do not go hand to hand because they're very completely different games, but it's just my personal opinion. My ultimate opinion though, Red Dead Redemption 2 should have won Game of the Year in 2018. For God of War to beat Red Dead Redemption 2 was a joke. Coming in at number 6 is a game that I've played since I was a young child, Dragon Age. Now you guys are all going to start saying, oh, there's no way that God of War is worse than Dragon Age, la 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 la. Well, guess what? It is. I preferred it so much more. This was one of the games that at the time that Skyrim was released, only 2 years before this, it was a game at the time where my genre for Dragon Age was building up. I was loving the RPG type style games where I was like, this is actually awesome. These are the type of games that I love to play. And this is why Dragon Age was coming in at number 6. And I know for all you guys that are saying that Dragon Age there's no way it's better than God of War, there's no way. I prefer the combat. I didn't prefer the story. I know the story in God of War was so much better, and I know a lot of things in game mechanics was so much better in God of War, but Dragon Age is kind of nostalgic for me. It's one of the games that, it's not one of the best RPGs as I've played, but it's one of the games that I've got into the RPG style worlds and going into the fantasy life that I'm doing. And this resembles off me, like the games that I like to do. I love to do Elder Scrolls type games, and Dragon Age kind of comes somewhat close to it, not exactly, and this is what I personally love. So sorry that I've upset so many of you. I know 99% of you I've upset it, but it's just my opinion. Let's move on to number 5. Moving on to number 5, and this is a game that I'm really wanting to play fully, is Baldur's Gate 3. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 is a role-playing video game style with a single-player and cooperative multiplayer elements. Players can create one or more characters and form a party along with a number of pre-generated characters to explore the game's story. Optionally, players are able to take one of their characters and team up online with other players to form a party. The game implements a flexible quest system with various approaches to resolving most quests. Players can eliminate almost any non-player character, regardless of their importance to the storyline, yet still continue to advance through the game. The game is divided into 3 acts, each taking place in a distinct region in the world. Within these acts, the game adopts a non-linear format, permitting players to tackle quests in virtually any sequence. Now, the Baldur's Gate 3 takes place in a fictional world of the Forgotten Realms during the year of 1492 DR. Over 120 years after the events of the previous game, Baldur's Gate 2 Shadow of Aim. and months after the events of playable Dungeons & Dragons module, players gate descents into the arena. Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the games that I'm so curious to play. I have played this game a little bit. Now, I never have purchased this game, and I'm willing to purchase it in the future. And maybe my next game that I'm going to start playing over on Twitch. But the game, the Dungeons & Dragons, a turn-based type game, I'm unsure if I'm actually going to not like the game style. But the dialogue and the cutscenes and the story to it looks incredible. Could be one of the best stories to it ever in a game. I'm not sure, and a lot of people have been saying this, but as I've watched people play the game, a turn-based, not sure. But you might be surprised, saying, Fallen, why are you putting Baldur's Gate 3 above games that you've already played? Well, this game looks so good, and I know it's better than Dragon Age and God of War, and this game is potentially, maybe not my style of game, but the thing is though, I know that this game is worthy of being in number 5. Now, coming in number 4 is Elden Ring. Elden Ring is the latest game from the veteran Japanese studio From Software, the creators of the critically acclaimed Souls series, which began with 2009's Demon's Souls and continued through the Dark Souls trilogy. It's an open world role-playing adventure set in a ravaged place known as the Land Between. You play as a warrior tasked with restoring the ring and becoming ruler of a new kingdom. If you've played Witcher or Elder Scrolls games, you'll get it pretty quickly. Essentially, you'll need to be exploring a vast kingdom filled with castle, caves, and spooky dungeons, and fighting crazy monsters from tiny imps to limbering trolls and fire-breathing dragons. While doing this, you'll also meet non-player characters who give you challenging quests, and if you're lucky, valuable rewards. Now, a lot of people have said that Elden Ring is what The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild would be if it hated you. That's a pretty good analysis. It is a vast game with beautiful and diverse landscapes, a terrifying of monsters, and an incredibly deep leveling up system that rewards experimentation and personalization. There are so many things to discover in the world that you find yourself constantly wanting to talk about it and compare experiences. I never really understood this with the Dark Souls trilogy, but I get it now. With From Software titles, you're not just buying a game, you're joining a community. A lot of fun of the game is what happens outside of it. Fantastic game, one of the best games I've ever played in my life. Is it hard? Hell yeah, it is. I am not a sweat like a lot of players that have played this game. Now, obviously, this takes a lot of time and a lot of patience to actually get over and finish this game. But the thing is, though, just the depth and the time and effort that they've put into this game, phenomenal. I cannot believe that this game has been out for only 2 years and it still is amazing. One of the best games to actually play. And obviously, it's not one of my top favorite games because, well, for one, I do suck at these type of games. So if I was a lot better, it probably would be at my number 1. But unfortunately, I suck at the game, so I kind of never really got to finishing the game, but I played quite a lot of it. But it's coming in my number 4, and, it's such a good game that I feel bad that it's not in my top 3. Now for my number 3rd spot, it is The Witcher 3. It is a 2015 action role-playing game developed and published by the Polish studio CD Projekt. This game takes place in a fictional fantasy world. Players control Geralt, a monster slayer for hire known as a Witcher, and search for his adopted daughter who is on the run from the otherworldly wild hunt. Players battle the game's many dangers with weapons and magic, interact with non-player characters, and complete quests to acquire experience points and gold, which are used to increase Geralt's abilities to purchase equipment. The game's story has 3 possible endings, determined by the player's choice at key points in the narrative. Wild Hunt was released on PlayStation 4, Windows and Xbox One in May 2015, with a Nintendo Switch version released in October 2019 and PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and X versions released in December 2022. The game is surrounded by parallel dimensions and extra-dimensional worlds, humans, elves, dwarves, monsters and other creatures to coexist on the continent. The continent is caught up in a war between the Empire of Nilfgaard, led by an emperor, who invaded the northern kingdoms. Several locations appear, including the free city of Novigrad, the Radiant city of Oxenford, the no man's land of Valonin, the city of Vixima. Now this game is basically a Skyrim 2.0, one of the most amazing games and just in-depth story that has its own TV series. The TV series is massive. It's one of the biggest TV series on Netflix. Now, it's got a lot of controversial sides to things now with the different Geralt actors that's coming in now. But now that this game is just incredible. Now they've also released a Witcher 4 game that's coming out in the future. It just shows how good this game is. The Witcher 3 was one of the biggest games in any year with releases and how much it sold. It's basically up there with Elden Ring with the amount that it had sold. The Witcher 3 is still up to age as it is today. You can play it today and you would think that this game was released in 2024. The game is so in depth with combat, so in depth with side quests, so in depth with the main quest. It's so in depth with everything else. The world is massive, bigger than Skyrim, and I cannot actually get my hands and head around to how big it is. There's so much to do in it. The game is amazing. It's one of the best games ever. And like I said with the Dragon Age situation, Witcher 3 is basically a Skyrim, but in a different type of world and universe, which I love. And I was so happy to play the game, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. And that's going into my number 3. Coming in at my number 2 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This was released in 2017 and it is an action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Switch and Wii U. Set at the end of the Zelda timeline, the player controls Link as he sets out to save Princess Zelda and prevents Ganon from destroying the world. Players explore the open world of Hyrule while they collect items and complete objectives such as puzzles or side quests. Players are tasked with exploring the Kingdom of Hyrule while controlling Link. Breath of the Wild encourages a non-linear gameplay which is illustrated by the lack of divine entrances or exits to areas. As Link, players can perform actions such as running, climbing, swimming and gliding with a paraglider, although Link is limited by his stamina. Link can have items such from the environment including weapons, food and other resources. Unlike previous Zelda games, weapons and shield degrade though through use, eventually shattering. Many items have multiple uses. For example, wooden weapons can light fires, wooden shields can collect incoming enemy arrows, and shields can be useful as makeshift snowboards. Now the plot is pretty simple, to save Zelda and stop Ganondorf from destroying the whole world. And this is just an amazing game. Zelda is so nostalgic for me. Now I know maybe a lot of you guys have been a Zelda fan in the Nintendo series when you've been playing as a kid. I started playing when I was Twilight Princess. Love that game. It's one of my favorite games of all time in the Zelda world. And to have Breath of the Wild, which was an RPG, but in a Zelda sense, incredible. I have no words to describe how good this game is. The puzzling was just amazing. The story to it was really cool. Just all the cutscenes and all the missions that you have to do and the free-for-all you have to do and just everything you can do is just incredible for this game. This is why this game is coming in at number 2. Coming in at number 1 is probably the most controversial rankings that I could probably ever do is The Last of Us Part 2. One of my favorite games of all time. I don't care what anyone has to say about, with Joel dying in this game. Last of Us Part 2 is the best Last of Us in the series. It is incredible of how well this game was produced. This was produced by Naughty Dog. It got so much backlash from this release of the game. I could not believe my eyes of the amount of backlash that this game got just from one character dying. Now I know there's a lot of other issues that are going into the game, but the story that was into this game was incredible. Combat, 10 out of 10. Everything in this game was 10 out of 10. I could not imagine a more perfect game than The Last of Us Part 2. I was loving it so much. I could not believe the ending of the story. I finished the game in almost 2 days. I was just addicted to playing. I just wanted to go next mission, next mission, next mission. Now I understand with the whole hate towards Naughty Dog and the whole game itself, but when I was playing the first Last of Us, I actually wanted Ella to actually take over the story and for her to be able to be the main character for the next game. But that's why Last of Us Part 2 is coming in my number 1. But thank you guys so much for watching the video today. I hope you guys have had a good day so far. Let me know down below your rankings for the Game of the Year award winners. But let me know what you disagree on. And I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree on my list, but it's my personal opinion. But appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.